Man, Texas-Ohio State was incredible yesterday. Defensive struggle, I know some of you don't like that, but it was one of those games early on. I was standing there and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, doesn't feel like either of these teams is going to deliver a knockout blow per se. It feels like one of those 12-round, maybe even the old school 15-round prize fights, just a heavyweight fight, and you can tell this is probably going to go to decision. No one's going to pull away by 3 or 4 touchdowns. It's not going to be a splattering, none of that. And that is what played out. So if that's what's going to play out, which is pretty much the style of game I expected, then I'm thinking to myself, well, let's see. Who has the edge at quarterback? I think Texas is going to have the edge. Who has the edge staff-wise? Well, obviously, Ryan Day's having to replace both coordinators, and Sark is not. So clearly, I think Texas has that edge. Which team should be hungrier? Probably not the one that just won the national title, right? Probably the one that got knocked out by the team that went on to win the national championship. So you would think you got all these edges on the side of the Texas Longhorns, and that is not the way the game played out. As you know, box scores will lie to you, but the ball does not lie, nor does fall. Texas, let's just pretend we pull the box score up, huh? 336 to 203, total yardage advantage. They outrushed them 166 to 77. They hold Ohio State to 2.3 yards per carry. Ohio State is 3 of 12 on third down. Ohio State has one explosive pass play, 0 runs of 10-plus yards, and they win anyway. Why? Because they're opportunistic, and they're very hard-nosed defensively, and they are exceptionally coached. That's what it turns out Ohio State is. Home field didn't hurt them either. Because after all that, Ohio State still led 14-zip in the fourth quarter. And it was really, really fun to watch. Game flew by. Classic Big Ten vibes. Game flew by. Texas was 1 of 5 on fourth downs. It has plagued them. Getting all the way down to the 1-yard line. They had 2 drives get inside the 5-yard line and came away with 0 points on those. It's just, Meemaw would call that bow in your neck. Ohio State bowed their neck when they needed to, and Texas did not. This wasn't some definitive performance either way. There's a lot of hyperbolic ways people love talking about this game. I actually thought Sark phrased it or presented it properly in his post game because he wasn't nearly as panicked as most Texas folks are. I mean, I had one Texas fan who shall remain nameless, Texas grad, not just a fan, Texas grad, who shall remain nameless, that said, man, we're hoping to sit in 2010 all over again. I hope so, too, for your sake. And for mine, I got you going to Atlanta. This was not a conference game. Texas notably still undefeated in conference play. But we like to talk about the winners first. So I would like to talk to you about how big a staff win I felt like this was for Ohio State. Of course, staff. Matt Patricia's not on the field. No, Brian Hartline didn't take a single snap. But just, I don't think people understand how hard it is. They don't understand immunity. They don't understand how hard it is, period, to just coach at the highest level, play at the highest level. Yeah, okay, all that. But we know all that. Think about what Ryan Day just did. He went from being questioned about whether he was the right guy for the job as late as early December of last year to going on to make the run they did in the playoffs. They win the national championship. Then he loses a really high-level offensive coordinator to the NFL in Chip Kelly. He loses an insanely high-level defensive coordinator to an in-conference opponent in Penn State. And he goes and he gets Matt Patricia, and he elevates Brian Hartline. Now, mind you, this is the Ohio State coordinator position. Pick which side. So he's got his pick of most anyone he wants. So these are the guys he chose. He chose to elevate Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline's paid his dues. He's served his time. He knows that program. He's run a phenomenal position room for a long time. He's recruited very well for a long time. And he gets his shot to be the offensive coordinator. Matt Patricia comes in. And a lot of people looked at that and said, Matt Patricia, like he's won in the NFL, but out of all the available options, Matt Patricia, and Ryan Day sat back and said, yep, no emotion, just yep, these are the guys I'm going to choose. That's why. That's why. Texas comes in yesterday, and they were made to look very average. Texas is not average, guys. I promise you the coming weeks will bear that out. Texas is not average. Ohio State made them look that way because Ohio State's just really good. They were ultra hungry. They were ultra disciplined. New quarterback, new coordinators, replacing a huge chunk of their roster off a championship. The reason I'm harping on this is because of what logic and conventional wisdom and generic history tells you. Logic, conventional wisdom, and generic history tells you a team that fits those categories win a title. Most of those players are gone, including the quarterback and both coordinators. And then you open at home against a team that is equally as talented as you and ultra hungry, and they haven't won anything, and they're foaming at the mouth. It just should be a reality check for you, and instead you dealt a reality check. Good for Ohio State. It's a starting point for this offense, too. You know, it's funny how if you have A and B scenarios, it changes everyone's worldview. So Ohio State scored, 14 points, right? They had 203 total yards. They had 11 first downs. They were very limited on the ground, but they won. You score 14 and you win, everyone's happy. You score 14 and the other guy scores 30 and everyone's not happy. But the point here is that's what's important. It's important to win the game, but the perspective on it now, since you won, and since you showed, hey, we can still play really, really high-level defense around here, is you buy your offense time, because I assume that this is the floor for them. I assume they'll only get better running the ball. That's a bold assumption, but I'm going to assume it because not many opponents are Texas defensively. So I assume that they'll slowly elevate, they'll slowly progress, but here's what's fun about it. Hey, wait just a second. I appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. When you play complimentary ball, you can afford to do that. You can afford to do what you do at a really cold pool, and that is you can dip your toe in, and then you slowly go into the knee, and then all of a sudden it's up to your waist, and for some reason you tense up your shoulders, even though that does not make the water any warmer, and then eventually you submerge yourself. Take that deep breath, submerge yourself. Well, sometimes that has to be week one, and you have to just dive in because your defense can't stop anything. But when you play high-level defense like they can, you can afford to slowly nurse a new quarterback along. Now, eventually, Julian Sand will have to win a game for them in order for them to win the Big Ten or win a national championship. That's the way football always is. But he didn't have to do it yesterday. That's good news. That's very good news. That's encouraging to me. So, what about Texas? I was disappointed in them. I expected more from Texas offensively. I was not part of that Arch for Heisman group. I was not part of that group at all. You'll remember on this show we sung quite a different tune than most of America did on Arch Manning. Having said that, Arch has been around there for a long time, and he's ultra talented, and I just flat out expected more. And I did not expect, if Texas lost, for it to be reasons related to timing and accuracy and mechanics. I'm not a quarterback's coach, but even I'm standing there on the field watching him and saying, that doesn't look right. Oh, that ball didn't even come out of his hand right. Look at the trajectory on the ball. It was the kind of game from field level where if you were watching it, you did not have to see where the ball went. I was standing next to Will Compton yesterday, and I had two different instances where the ball comes out of Arch's hand, and you can say underthrown or overthrown. You don't even have to be looking downfield. You can just tell it's coming out of his hand wrong. So you can look at that two different ways. I'm high on Texas, so I'm going to choose to look at it optimistically, and I'm going to choose to think that that guy is a really high-caliber athlete. Steve Sarkisian is a really high-level, high-caliber coach. So is his staff. They're going to get it right. They're going to get it right. That's what I'm going to choose to believe, because if they don't, that strips a Steve Sarkisian offense of everything I respect about it and people fear about it. Accuracy and anticipation are musts. Those are non-negotiables. Your quarterback has to have those. And this isn't some guy you got off the portal scrap heap like Heupel. Heupel, of all people, should have dealt with the problems yesterday that Sark and Arch did. One faced Syracuse, one faced Ohio State on the road. I grant you that. But I don't care who they were playing and where they were playing them. You hold someone to 14 in their own building, and you're Texas, and you got the kind of talent stacked on top of each other they do, you got to win the game. You tell me, if you told me Friday they're going to give up 14, are you happy with that? Absolutely, I'm happy about that. Hey, you're going to hold them 2.3 yards per carry. Are you happy about that? Absolutely, I'm happy about that. I'm going to win. I'm going to win 10 times out of 10 if I'm Texas. But I didn't. And I'll tell you the other thing that if I were going glass half empty on this that concerns me is they're slower at receiver. And that's pretty glaringly obvious. That was something I heard whispers about out of fall camp, and I just kind of wanted to ignore it because speed is all relative. Texas not being as fast as they were last year could still mean Texas is really fast. But so Arch had time to throw yesterday. And again, I'm watching him and I'm thinking to myself, man, there got to be folks open with as much time as he has to throw. And there were some guys he missed, but there weren't many guys open. Ohio State just threw a blanket on them. So I expect both of these teams to be there in the end. I expect both of them to be right in contention for their conference races and playoff races and all that. I just wonder, if they see each other again, how different a tune do you sing? We've seen this before. Teams play at the beginning of the year, teams play at the end of the year, and you're saying, wow, this feels like it feels like a totally different matchup now than it did 3 or 4 months ago. If they play again, are we saying that? And that's the first thing. The second thing that stood out is there was such a high level of mutual respect between opponents here. Pretty refreshing, really. It's very obvious when one side respects the other as your competitive equal. Now, you want to rip their throat out, man. You want to dominate them, and you got no love lost for them. But you can very, very much have disdain for someone, but also have respect for them. And that was why there wasn't a whole lot of chippiness in this game. Did you notice there wasn't a whole lot of laundry on the field, not a ton of personal fouls. It's just high-level competition. Pretty refreshing to watch. So both of these teams have high floors. I expect them to be there, but I could not get over how buttoned up, how disciplined, how hard-nosed, and how fast Ohio State played. And everything's new. Virtually everything's new. So very encouraging. Still think Texas will be fine, but was very, very underwhelmed offensively. So there's work to do. They get paid a lot of money, both coaches and players, to get the work done.